Hey guys, welcome back to another Warframe video and continuing our series with Lore Behind the Frames. Today, let's cover Revenant. So Revenant is a Revenant, sure. However, every Warframe is a Warframe, but that doesn't mean that they're all just like some plain basic generic looking model. Every single one is very different from one another. So Revenant clearly has a few layers to him, but first, just what the heck is a Revenant, in case you don't know. So in short, a Revenant is a ghost or a spirit with extremely strong will, and they feel the need to complete a task that is left undone in our mortal plane. So they then possess their own corpse in order to do so. I got deeper into explaining everything Revenant in my Sebagoth video, so perhaps you should go look at that if you need more information, so I don't repeat myself in this one for the people that saw it. Moving on, assuming you already know this information from the other video, just to save some time because there's still a few more things to talk regarding Revenant that's gonna take up some time. So Revenant clearly has some vampiric undertones, and I feel it's because when he was being conceptualized along with Garuda, they were like both in the running for who is gonna be the vampire frame. However, I feel like they both got chosen because they liked them for different reasons, and then they diverged, they split into different things. Then they're like, okay, let's build a Garuda then. So it's gonna be all Garuda-ish, sure, but the core foundation, I feel it was a vampire. And the same thing with Revenant, it was a vampire, but they changed it. And you may be like, well, which one is a vampire? Well, there's many types of vampires in our world's mythologies. There's all kind of different ways, and it's because different cultures view the essence of life as different stuff. For instance, some said it was spirit, some said it was mana, some said it's blood. Like, it's all kind of different stuff. So there's all kind of different vampires in mythology. So which one did they go for in Warframe? I guess they couldn't decide and they liked both, so they're like, let's have a psychic vampire, or energy vampire, Revenant, and let's have a blood vampire. And in case you're wondering, can you even be a vampire and a Revenant at the same time? Yes, like in some cases, the stories aren't even clear if a Revenant is a vampire itself or if it's not, if it's something else. Like it gets muddled, it gets confusing. To make it more clear for you to understand, a Revenant can have vampiric traits, but it doesn't have to. But a vampire doesn't have Revenant traits and abilities, just to set the record straight. This is a case where it's showing both, signs of both. So what is a psychic vampire or energy vampire? You may hear people say that like a narcissistic person or a toxic person or someone that just drains the fucking life out of you emotionally or spiritually is a psychic vampire or something like that, but that's not really the case. That doesn't mean that you're actually a psychic vampire or an energy vampire. I mean, they could be perhaps, but that doesn't mean that they necessarily are. So I actually went over this in a few videos, and it's energy manipulation. You know, everything theoretically has energy and you can manipulate it, you can absorb it, and you can basically take energy from something and put it into something else. Like, let's say your dog is sick and is dying, you can, theoretically give it a little bit of boost to make it a little bit more healthier, make it live a little bit longer kind of thing, theoretically, right? This is why in my Necros video I said that necromancers are likely to have tried this at one point, because you're constantly dealing with life and death, and at some point you're gonna get the idea like, hey, why don't I just move this? Why don't I just prolong you a little bit longer, or put you out of your misery and try to take some life away just to end your suffering kind of thing. So I theorize that many necromancers have done this. They've tipped the scale in one direction or the other at some point. It's very likely. However, where does this differ from vampirism, psychic vampirism? It's because doing this channeling of energy, doing this energy manipulation of moving energy around to either give life or take life, that's, giving and taking, like I just said. But if you're more psychic vampire, you're not giving shit back. You're not giving it back, and you're not doing it for others. You're not trying to heal someone. You're not a medicine person. You're just taking that shit for yourself, selfishly, to increase your strength, to increase your health, to increase your life or your beauty, or you're doing that to cast your own type of spells with. You're taking, and never giving back. And what is this supposed to theoretically feel like if you're the victim? Well, it's kind of supposed to feel like you're starving, but you're not hungry. Like you're exhausted, but you're not supposed to be. Like you just came out of an 8-hour sleep or whatever. You're fully rested and you drink coffee, but now you're drained. You have no energy whatsoever. You just want to go take a nap. Like that's theoretically what it's supposed to feel like lightheaded, dizzy. You just want to sleep. And you know, some people do naturally make you feel like this. Are they actually channeling energy from you? I don't know, right? But in mythology, it's supposed to be more than just an average human doing this. It's supposed to be a spirit that has come back from the dead to do this, to drain, well, not to drain people, but they drain people to sustain themselves, to continue to do whatever they're doing. I've said this in a past video, I believe it was the Sabagoth video, but if you were to be some kind of spellcaster and then you die, you would be better suited to manipulate the spirit world. Like you have a jump start as to what it's like to be a spirit. Like you can create orbs, you drain energy, or you know, theoretically you know how to manipulate the spirit world. You know how to get shit done. So if you were a modern psychic vampire and then you die, you're more likely to be an actual vampire, spirit vampire, when you're a ghost, right? Because now you know how to drain energy. And if you do drain energy as a ghost, then somebody's gonna classify you as a vampire, as an energy vampire, like a real legit one. However, if you don't know how to possess your own body, then they're probably just gonna say you're a wraith. Yeah, so that'd be kind of disappointing. So I want to jump to in-game lore for a second to explain Revenant, because he's an exception, right? Because what actually happened, right? Was he like a normal Warframe and then he got infected? But then that's kind of like the Valkyrie thing, where I think they didn't actually think that far ahead and they just made the frame. But what was the original frame like? Anyway, let's just ignore that for a second. Right? It's got to break immersion. So what I'm trying to imply here is like Revenant is not around the entire day. Like he's only coming out when the Eidolons come out, and the Eidolons are just collecting energy all day and then they come out at night, like a Revenant themselves, right? My thought is he's not coming back out at night to combat them. He's coming out at night because they finally harness enough energy, and he himself is draining energy from them. His energy is their energy. So my theory is if he was actually to defeat them once and for all, he would then not have enough energy himself, and he would then dissipate. And he's not gonna leave on to the next plane of existence because his job is done. That's what I'm trying to say. I think would move on to the next plane because he has no more energy source, unless he starts to feed off of something else. They're his battery. That's where he's channeling his energy from. Which, if that's the case, then he is way more vampiric than he actually is Revenant. Like he would not even be a Revenant. He's like just a vampire, an energy vampire. And it just looked like he was a Revenant. But perhaps I'm wrong and he actually is just a Revenant that has vampiric qualities. Moving on to the frame, his passive at first didn't really make sense to me, but if you look at it through the vampiric lens, where if you drain someone, you get some of their abilities, some of their qualities, or even their looks in some versions, right? So in this case, you have immunity to the magnetism because the Eidolons have immunity to it. So his first ability is Enthrall. And this kind of wouldn't make sense for average generic basic Revenant, right? But for a vampire, this makes absolute sense. So what it is just like in vampire lore, where you can impose your will upon someone else and kind of like mesmerize them into being your servant. There's different levels of this. So the first level is just like you have current control over a type of person to do things for you. Like in Warframe's case, you're turning on your allies like a zombie for the person that enthralled you. You could take this to a deeper level and you could ghoul the person. They would be like Igor, but a ghoul doesn't have to look ghoulish. Like, if they weren't constantly drained to like almost death, and they didn't feed on blood themselves or isolate themselves from the light all the times, they would look like a normal person, like Heather from Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. You could look really good and still be a ghoul, just saying. And another level of this enthralling would just be to sire a person and make them a vampire yourself. So his next ability is a weird one. So Mesmer's skin, what is even transpiring here? Is this some super advanced type of energy manipulation? Or is this an ability that the sentients have? Or is this some pop culture mimicry? I'm actually not even sure on this one. His third ability is Reeve. When I was growing up, I didn't like when vampire shows and movies did stuff like this, like a vampire turning into a wolf or a bat or a mist of clouds. It just didn't make sense to me. I'm like, why the fuck is this happening? But the reason they do it is because the Strigoi, which is a type of vampire, they were supposed to do this. They were supposed to be able to transform into different beings, like a wolf or a bat or a mist of clouds, and that doesn't mean they're not a vampire anymore just because they're in this form. They could still drain the life out of you, which is what this move does. So some fun facts about vampires, and it'll probably give you some clarity as to some things they were like, why is this happening? For instance, in like old-fashioned vampire stuff, I'm not talking about like the Twilights, that doesn't exist, okay, that's not a thing. I'm talking about like even Buffy the Vampire Slayer. In there you see Dracula, he's like not normal. Like, you stake him, he doesn't die. You cut off his head or whatever, he's not gonna die. Like, he just keeps coming back. And some people may be like, what the fuck, this is not following any rules of vampirism. What is happening here? And it's because he's not normal. Like, in the pop lore, he's basically a revenant vampire, and that's why he keeps coming back. You can't really kill a revenant. You can't really kill Dracula. He's just gonna keep coming back, right? And he can still do the mist and the wolf thing and the bat thing because he's a Strigoi too. He like has elements of all the vampires, at least all the vampires that people know about when they were doing their version of Dracula. Another revenant that you could see in pop culture is iZombie. She's not your stereotypical zombie because she has consciousness, she has a soul, she has independent thought. And people may have been like, what the fuck is going on? That's not a zombie. Technically it is, because she's a revenant. In the comics they say she's a revenant. That's the type she is. That's why she has this consciousness, this ability and stuff like that. I don't really think they said that in the show, even though I saw all of the show, every episode. But yeah, she is a revenant. That's why she's able to do things like that. So really quick, I want to cover the misconceptions of how vampires are said to be destroyed and wraiths, and why. Okay, so one of the earliest stories they have of someone that they thought was like a wraith, they dug up the body, they poked it, it bled, and they figured it was a living entity, you know, that comes out at night and does these things and feasts on blood. So they wanted to destroy it. And I know that the modern view, that a modern explanation is you stake it to the coffin so it doesn't get out anymore. That's what it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be you puncture the heart with this wooden stake. No, that's really modern. It's supposed to be that you nail them to the coffin and they stay still. But that's not the original way. You see, the first time in story anyway that somebody encountered something that was undead, they poked it with a stick in the chest to try to kill it. But they couldn't actually get through the skin. The skin was too hard, it was too like leathery, so they couldn't get the stake inside of the skin. However, the people after that point, hearing that story, I think they misunderstood what was happening in the story. So they're like, oh, we're supposed to stake it to the coffin so he wouldn't rise anymore. That's what I think they thought. Just like modernly people think, oh, you stake it through the heart because that's what you're supposed to do, that's how you kill it. No, both of those ways are wrong. They were just trying to stab the thing and it didn't work. So what happened in turn is they cut off the head because they found the skin around the neck to be less difficult than the skin on the chest. So they decapitated the thing. They were just trying to kill the undead corpse. See how the more time goes on, the more altered the story gets, the more layers get added upon it, and because of misunderstandings. So theoretically, how would one go about killing a vampire in reality if they were real? Well, all you really have to do is destroy the body, because they're not normally a revenant. So you destroy the body and that's it. They're not gonna come back anymore. They're not gonna, unless they're ghosts haunting you, then they're pretty much done. So any way you could destroy a human body, you destroy a vampire. Or you don't have to destroy it at all, you could trap it, right? You could chain it in a coffin, or stake it to a coffin, or bury it in cement. I don't know, but make it immobile and then you're done. A revenant, however, is never done. You're not gonna stop it. It's gonna complete its task. That's why if you have something that's more than a revenant, like how sometimes they portray Dracula, where he's like a revenant vampire, it is like impossible to defeat him, right? Anyway, that's about it for this one, guys. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.